Hi, I'm Chris Haigh and this is the Fiddle Channel, and today we're going to look at bluegrass bowing technique. In this video I'm going to look at lots of different ideas which are relevant to bluegrass bowing, and if you've learnt as a classical player then you will have a certain idea of how bowing should work, and if you're just a beginner then you'll be baffled as to how the bow could possibly work, especially at these high speeds that you often get in bluegrass. But in this video I'm going to look at some of the techniques that you can use to make your bowing flow, to make it exciting and dynamic and driving. I'm going to look at various shuffles such as the Nashville Shuffle and the Georgia Shuffle and the double shuffle. I'm going to look at kickoffs, at triplets, and I'm going to try and explain some of the difference between players like Kenny Baker and Vassar Clements, who have a very different attitude to bowing. So perhaps the first thing to say is that in old time or square dance playing, you tend to have relatively simple melodies with lots of whole notes. So looking at a tune like Red Haired Boy, you might something like that might be the way a square dance player might play it. Whereas a bluegrass player will tend to fill up a lot of the space with eighth notes. So there's a lot going on there, and it's very often fast. So what is your approach to bowing? The simplest approach to start off before you really think about how to do it right is to do everything separate. So let's just look at the first 4 bars of Red Haired Boy. So I did all that with what you might call a sawstroke, which is every bow separate. And we started off okay. But there was an odd number of notes in bar 2, which means that we end up on bar 3 on an up bow. And suddenly it becomes much harder work to do than, because we're used to playing our strong beats from a down rather than from an up. Now, I'm not saying never start a bar with an up bow by any means, but it is a lot easier to start usually with a down bow. So one of the first things you might do to help your bowing would be to, when you do come to a situation like that with an odd number of notes, then you slur 2 of them. There, so I'm slurring 2 up. And that means that every bar is going to start with a down bow. So let's just hear a little bit of that played up to speed. And to start off with, you will find yourself having to do that really slowly in order to work it out. And the more experienced you become, the easier it becomes, because your right hand learns how to do it by itself. And the fast quavers I'm mostly doing between the midway and like a third from the tip. And pretty short bows, and most of it coming from the wrist if possible. What you don't want to be doing is your arm moving like that from the elbow, or worse still from the shoulder. With waltzes or slow tunes, a good strategy is to try to get just 2 bows in each bar. So it's like breathing in and out. So it's a down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And when you have a selection of notes within that bar, you can choose how you're going to slur it in order to make that happen, because there's lots of ways of doing it. But certainly for a beginner, you're going to find yourself with your bow randomly thrashing around with ups and downs, and this just adds a lot of kind of logic and naturalness to the bowing. So I'm not saying you always have to do this, but it does work well for a beginner. So that's one reason for adding slurs. It's just to get to your down bow when you want it at the beginning of a bar. Another reason for using slurs is that the slurs naturally create accents. So if you were playing something like that, da ba da 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 ba da da da, on the separate bow, that has to go 3 times as fast as the 3 notes that are making up the up bow. So if you wanted an accent on dat and doo doo dat and doo doo dat and doo doo da, then that's a good way of doing it, by doing separate 3 slurs, separate 3 slurs. You can get a similar effect by slurring 2 and bowing 2 separate. So that gives you a da 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 da. Slurring 2 and then 2 separate. So you're accenting the first note and the 5th note, or the first beat and the 3rd beat. And this leads itself into what we call the Nashville Shuffle. Da 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 da. So there are some tunes which have this rhythm built into them, like Old Joe Clark is the classic example. And you will also find this rhythm in a thing called Taters, which is a standard kind of intro. So it's usually 2 bars, da 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 da, and you'll find this in bluegrass and in old time music as well. And it's usually, I would say, it's usually done down at the heel. But most tunes won't have the whole note, 2 half notes like that. It's more common to have a string of 8th notes, but you can still do the same bowing by slurring. Let's just hear that with some backing. It gives you regularity, it gives you drive. Eventually you will find this a little bit tedious and it'll be kind of monotonous. So this is just one of the approaches that you want to use in any particular tune. A shuffle that I prefer is the Georgia Shuffle, which instead of alternating down, up, it puts all the accents on the down. I did a video all about this. It's a little bit harder than the Nashville Shuffle, but I find it much more useful. So the accent is coming on every single down bow. And Redhead Boy is a good one for demonstrating this. So it's good to practice a tune like this with the same pattern all the way through. Even where the tune kind of doesn't really want to accept it, you can force it onto a tune. And it's a very good exercise, but when it comes to actually performing a tune, it's better to vary the bowing more. So this gives you kind of regularity. You can use bowing to give yourself a little bit of irregularity, shall we say. So if we slur 3 and then 3 and then 2, then you get this. So yeah, that gives you a surprise, shall we say. You wouldn't want to do this all the way through a tune because it would very quickly lose its surprise, but just dropping in one of these rhythms would be quite good. So I use slurs a lot, but a lot of bluegrass players use very few slurs. And we got an example of Shucking the Corn, and the Paul Warren recording of this was all separate bows. So I'm just going to show you the two lines of this recording of his. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that, it kind of works with all separate, partly because it is all 8th notes. So there's no messing about with slurring in order to get back to where you want to be, because every bar is going to start on a down. You can make it work if your bows are very short, and if they're middle towards the tip. If you try doing, that's going to be really jarring doing it there. But if you look at this phrase, look at what your hand is doing. Now if you try slurring 4 together, then I find there's much less action having to happen in order to make that work. That's real hard work compared to... So one of your decisions is going to be simply how much work you want to have to do, because there are some forms of bowing which are a lot easier than others. So my preference when playing fast in particular is to have long strings of slurs. And this is something that someone like Vassar Clements does an awful lot. I'll just demonstrate a little bit of Moonlight Midnight, and I did a video of this amazing solo. Mine won't be quite so amazing, but you'll get an idea of the flowing bowing. And so on. So there wasn't a huge amount of that going on, but there was loads of movement anyway. So that really helps you to flow, but sometimes flow is not what you want, and sometimes what you want is attack, particularly on individual notes. But we've got a little bit of Vassar's solo here on Standing on a Mountain, and we've got this phrase where he really wants that note to jump out, and if he did, it wouldn't be half as effective. So we 4 notes in a down and then 1 note on an up, and that is really punching. So the whole solo, or the beginning of that solo, and so on. So that really makes the note jump out. We've got a thing called a drop bow, which does something similar. I don't think anyone else uses the term drop bow, but I think it's a useful one. And this is for emphasizing individual notes, where you actually lift the bow off and drop it. And there's a solo, Dry and Dusty by Kenny Baker, which works well with this. So the solo... So this phrase, we're going into it, we're lifting off. And we're lifting off and we're coming down right at the heel where we've got the maximum attack. And then we got that as well. So an up, lift off, drop, and drop. So you didn't want to just flow all the way through that. You want to punch those notes, and that lifting off is a good idea. An important part of bluegrass fiddling is the intro or kickoff. And there's a very specific kickoff which was developed by Benny Martin, and this is starts with a triplet. It's done right down at the heel with maximum punch, down, up, down, and then usually 2 ups, so that you're starting the bow on a down at the beginning of the tune itself. And this is sometimes called son of a bitch for rhythmic reasons. So that's a really useful thing, and if you were to try and do it at the tip, it just has no power whatsoever. So always go for the heel for that. So earlier on we looked at the 2 shuffles, the Georgia Shuffle and the Nashville Shuffle, and there is a third which is more specific to bluegrass, and that is the double shuffle, also known as the Holcomb Bow or the Orange Blossom Special Shuffle. And I'm not going to explain this in detail here because it takes a while. I've done a video on this which will lead you through. Basically, it's a 2-bar pattern, 2 2s and a load of 3s. So... it's that, do that and 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 do that. When I first heard this, when I was, I don't know, 21 or something, I first heard the Orange Blossom Special, and I heard this shuffle, and I thought, wow, I would love to do that. And I tried it and I tried it, and I could not do it at all. And I forgot about it, and I came back 6 months later, having been furiously practicing other things, and as soon as I tried it, I could play it. So sometimes you're just not ready for it. But as I say, I think my video will get you into it, even if you've never done this. I'm just going to try a little bit more of Red-Haired Boy, and I'll drop this into there. So you can see it adds punch and excitement, and if you're a fiddler who's been doing this your whole life, it's not so exciting, but to someone who doesn't know what a double shuffle is, it really is quite something. Finally, a word about chopping, which is a very interesting technique. It's the chop started off as just actually it started off at the tip. And it's been developed by Richard Green, by Darrell Langer, and by Casey Dreesen in particular. And I think it was Richard Green who was told by Bill Monroe, to do lots of chopping because it was getting in the way, and he found that that wasn't half as good as that. So what the fiddle is doing here is copying the mandolin, which is going doing those little chops, which are very dead. So if you can do it, you can do it down bows or up bows. I much prefer up bows for those, but the modern concept of the chop is much more complex, and it's got this dead forward chop where you bang down and you hold down, but it's also got a backward movement and a forward movement, and so it's like 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And by mixing in little bits of chord, you get all sorts of fancy effects. And this again is something that I can't possibly explain in a few minutes, but I do have a video going into all of the detail of chopping. And the big danger with chopping, if you become obsessed with it, as I did for a while, is that you do too much of it and you just annoy people. So in a bluegrass context, unless you're Casey Dreesen, then don't do it very much. Just do it now and again and do it fairly quietly. But as a feature for something, it can be really exciting. I'm just going to finish off with a little bit of Rolling in My Sweet Baby's Arms. So yeah, treat that with respect and with care. Right, okay, I hope you found this useful. A quick whiz through bluegrass bowing, and don't expect to learn immediately from the stuff that I've shown you here, but I hope I've pointed you towards the stuff that you need to be able to do in the future. If you'd like a copy of the sheet music for all of this lesson, then do subscribe to the channel, send me an email, and I will send you that PDF. And there's lots more of this kind of stuff on my Patreon page, and you can get all of my PDFs in one go from there. So I hope you'll consider joining me there. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.